Okay, so let's taste some whiskey. So first up today in American whiskey tasting, we're going to be tasting a bourbon, but surprise, 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 it's not from Kentucky. This actually happens to be from Denver, Colorado. This is the AD Laws 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey. So very interesting. Laws Whiskey House, Alan Laws, is the proprietor, and it was one of the craft distilleries that popped up around 2010, right about at that point, and there was an enormous growth in craft distilleries. And Alan's been around for a long time. He's got some barrels that have been set out there for a number of years, and this is one of them right here. So we've got some 4-grain straight bourbon. Now that's very interesting, right? Because bourbon, as we know, actually does have a mash bill or a recipe. And we've learned that it has to be corn, right? 51% minimum, right? Kentucky, they pretty much like to be around the 72%. Other distilleries from around the country, they play with that amount. It depends what they're looking for. And now in a scenario where we have 4 grains, so it's not just corn, and it's not just followed by a flavoring grain of wheat or rye and a little bit of malted barley. It's actually all 4 of those: wheat, rye, barley, and corn. So this will be very interesting to taste. As you can see, it's got a really nice color to it. It's got a kind of a nice russet brown. It's kind of like a really square shouldered, nice package on that. And we're going to put this in neat glass. Now this is at 47.5% ABV, alcohol by volume. So that amount of alcohol is enough to really kind of move the molecules around, and just in this airspace right here between me pouring it into the glass, I could get a really good sense of the aroma of the whiskey. And with the neat glass here, of course, the alcohol is going to dissipate off of this broad edge here and give me a nice sweet spot to move in there without getting burned. And I get a lot of what I would call the typicity of bourbon. This is a word that the French distillers use, meaning is it typical of the category that it's in? And yes, it is. So I get some honey, I get a little bit of coconut, I get some vanilla, I get a little bit of butterscotch in there. Nice kind of flaky dough I get out of here, which is really nice. That's always a pretty that's a pretty smell, and a little bit of kind of like what wheat does. It brings a little fruitiness to it. So there is a little bit of top fruit there, indistinguishable. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Very pretty. Hmm. So on the palate, a lot of the wood notes came out, which was really nice. Now this is 47.5, so it's got some robust alcohol in there. One of the things that I picked up here was also it had a nice sense of solidity on my tongue. Remember, our tongue is great for picking up a sense of weight and of texture. And so for this, it just felt solid. It felt like it was in place. The amount of alcohol is really kind of making my um, uh, 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 my mouth water a little bit right there. And as it goes into the finish, I get a little bit of that graininess again, that fruitiness. The wood notes actually seem to take over a little bit. And it's about a medium long finish right here. So very nice. So let's actually now try this with a little bit of water. So remember, what does water do? It brings the alcohol down. Some aromas and flavors it will actually enhance. Others, it may actually suppress a little bit. So that's why we experiment with water to see it actually it will bring to every different whiskey. So it made the nose a little more timid, right? So it wasn't as robust because, of course, the alcohol went down. So I have to really kind of get into the glass now in order to pick it up. Now, remember that we learned in the lesson about nosing and tasting, my nose right now is tired, right? Because I've been into that glass about 5 or 7 times, and I've got a little bit of what's called anosmia. So I got to bring it back a little bit. You smell the back of your hand if you don't have any fragrance soaps, or you can go into the crook of your elbow if you don't have any fragrance on your clothes. And you can get a sense of bringing your nose back to a little bit of zero before going back in there again. So don't forget that's part of your protocol as we're tasting. See, and already, so I got a little bit of that's interesting, a little bit of root beer note, which is kind of neat. And let's taste it. So that solidity that I talked about on the undiluted tasting is now sort of crossed over into a little bit of a creaminess now. Now it has a little bit of a silky note to it. The wood notes are much more prominent now. And the 4 grains, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting blend. And we don't know what his ratio of rye to wheat to malt is. But because of that softness, I'm assuming that there's a higher malt content in here, maybe like 10%, maybe 12% in there. The fruitiness, which was on the nose, sort of like hangs around for about mid palate, but it doesn't really last into the finish. That's really where the wood takes over. So it's a very complex ride. And that's one of the things that we like about whiskeys that are good whiskeys. There's a sense of an adventure, some enjoyment, kind of like going on like a funhouse ride. You got an anticipation in the beginning, and when you get to the end, you look back, like, oh man, that was like great. So very pretty, very nice whiskey. This is Law's 4 grain straight bourbon, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.